What if I told you that the ocean was going through an extremely large and dangerous change? Even if the tide rolled in and out like it normally does, and the surface looked complacent, like just before sunrise. Every year, the ocean absorbs more than 25% of the carbon dioxide that is released into the air. And as the carbon dioxide content of the air increases, so does the content of our oceans. While scientists originally saw the ocean's absorption of carbon dioxide as beneficial because it took away some of the atmospheric greenhouse gases, today a lot of new problems are arising. This process, called oceanic acidification, has led to a dangerous drop in the surface pH of the ocean that could eventually lead to global consequences. The ocean, a once thought to be steady, untouched environment rich in sea life. However, since the Industrial Revolution in the 1800s, when there was a boom in both human and machine advancement, the ocean has been taking in billions of metric tons of carbon dioxide. Since the revolution, the ocean pH has dropped by 0.11, meaning that the amount of carbonic acid and the concentration of hydrogen ions has increased by over 30%. Carbonic acid is formed when carbon dioxide is absorbed in water. It's a very weak acid that is not naturally a threat to the existence of life. It's actually a blood buffer used during the respiratory process in all mammals. With the ocean's absorption of so much carbon dioxide and creation of carbonic acid, the pH of the ocean has been steadily dropping and becoming more acidic. But for all of you non-chemistry majors out there, let's break down ocean acidification a little bit more. When combined with water, carbon dioxide combines with one hydrogen and the extra oxygen in H2O to form HCO3, bicarbonate ions. But what is done with the extra hydrogen? That extra hydrogen combines with a carbonate ion to form regular old carbonic acid. When looking at this equation, the consequences of the production of carbonic acid do not seem very prevalent. However, many marine life are dependent upon the availability of free carbonate ions. With the creation of carbonic acid, these ions are used up, making it much harder for marine life to take up carbonate and create calcium carbonate, needed for their hard exoskeletons. The marine population that has been hit the hardest by ocean acidification are those that produce calcium carbonate shells. As stated in the article, How Will Ocean Acidification Impact Marine Life?, calcifying species are indispensable for ecosystems worldwide. They provide nursery habitats for fish, food for marine predators, and a natural defense for storms and erosion. The two main types of carbonate that are used by marine creatures are aragonite, such as corals, shellfish, and heteropods, and calcite organisms, which includes phytoplankton, foraminifera, and coccolithophore algae. Aragonite, which is formed by corals, the larvae of most mollusks, and some adult mollusks, is more easily dissolved than calcite. With both species, ocean acidification slows the building of shells and exoskeletons, making the organisms much more susceptible to dangers such as predators and temperature changes. Deeper waters naturally have higher concentrations of carbon dioxide due to the temperature and pressure being more ideal for absorption, and therefore the number of calcite and aragonite organisms decreases with increasing pressure and decreasing temperature. The area where there's the highest amount of carbon dioxide saturation and shell/exoskeleton building is called the saturation zone, which is lower in pH and typically closer to the surface. However, with the increase in production of carbonic acid, the saturation zone boundaries are quickly closing in, becoming smaller and smaller, not only limiting the amount of free carbonate to be taken up by these organisms, but also pushing them closer to the surface, where they may not be adapted for proper living. One of the aragonite species hit hardest by oceanic acidification has been the ocean's coral reefs, supporting more species per unit than any other marine environment. Scientists have estimated that over 50% of the initial coral cover has been lost in the past few decades. Healthy coral reefs are necessary for much more than just providing a habitat for other marine life. Coral reefs protect coastlines from tropical storms and the damaging effects of waves. They aid in nutrient recycling, and just the Great Barrier Reef alone contributes more than $1.5 billion annually to the Australian economy. Globally, it is estimated that 500 million people live within 100 kilometers of a reef and benefit from its production and protection. Scientists have been able to keep track of the effects of ocean acidification on corals because, like trees, corals produce annual layers of their exoskeletons, which can be read like tree rings to determine changes in coral health and environmental conditions. In recent years, the data collected has not been good. Since the 1990s, the exoskeletal layers have been steadily decreasing and becoming thinner and thinner. A calcareous foraminifera population, D. boloides, has also been hit particularly hard by the decreasing pH of the ocean. Scientists have found that these organisms are unable to build shells as large as their ancestors as recently as a century ago. Today, these shells are actually 35% smaller than the shells of the past, and an average of 9.4 micrograms less in weight. But you may now be wondering why foraminifera are so important to the oceanic food chain. Foraminifera are actually a planktonic species that often contain multi-chamberous shells and have very important symbiotic relationships with certain types of algae that are the main basis for the oceanic food chain. Without the protection from the calcareous foraminifera, the algae species may not be able to survive on its own, leading to the collapse of some portions of the global oceanic food chain. Along with the inability of organisms to produce shells and exoskeletons, another problem that scientists are running into is that it's getting harder for them to collect data on specific oceanic regions because many environmental changes, such as temperature and salinity in the ocean over the years, is recorded in the layers of many calcareous organisms. As the shells and exoskeletons of these organisms dissolve away, so does the data that contains them. As we reach the end of our segment today, let's recap on all we've learned about oceanic acidification. Since the increase in atmospheric carbon dioxide during the Industrial Revolution, our ocean has been taking in billions of metric tons of carbon dioxide each year. When this carbon dioxide is absorbed by the ocean, it is converted to bicarbonate ions and carbonic acid. This is causing a huge problem because calcareous organisms, or organisms that use calcium carbonate, are left with fewer carbonate ions to take up for building their shells and exoskeletons. These organisms are then unable to adapt to their environment in ways that they previously were able to, causing many to die off. Two of the biggest populations to be affected are our coral reefs and the foraminifera population, D. boloides. Not only are these specific species in danger, the entire oceanic food chain that is dependent upon these organisms is also at risk. If carbon dioxide is continued to be added at its current rates, the ocean's pH can be estimated to drop by another 120% by the end of this century, dropping the ocean pH to 7.7 or 7.8 and creating a more acidic ocean than has ever been seen.